In this tutorial, we'll learn how to use Cursor AI IDE with Java development. So if you are a Java developer and want to boost your productivity, or if you want to learn how to leverage AI in your day-to-day life, then this tutorial is for you. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, you have to have your environment setup. That means you have to have Java installed on your machine. For me, let's see what version of Java I have installed. In this tutorial, I want to focus for the beginners who are not an expert developer or a novice developer who want to build something with Java. Okay. So for that, first of all, if you do not have Java install Java on your system. Okay. I've installed JDK 21, which is the current LTS version. Okay. So for that, so from JDK download page, as we can see, JDK 24 is the latest release, but JDK 21 is the latest LTS version, means it have long-term support. So it is good idea to install the latest LTS version. So after installing Java, I have installed a tool called Maven. I have a tutorial on my channel how to configure Maven. This is a build tool, also dependency management tool for Java application. This one is optional for this tutorial. So after installing Java, you have to have Cursor AI, since we are going to learn Cursor. Okay, so Cursor AI have a 14 days free trial. After using the trial, if you believe it is worth it, then you can buy the pro version. Okay, so first of all, you have to download the Cursor AI on your PC. You don't have to be Windows. Cursor AI have support for all three platforms: Windows, Linux, Mac. So I have already installed Java Cursor AI on my system. And one pro tip is, since you are developing Java, Cursor AI is good. It can do all the stuff, but it's good idea to have a Java native IDE like Eclipse or Spring Tool Suite or IntelliJ. Okay, you can also use NetBeans. So if you want to develop things with Java, with Cursor, with the help of AI, it is very good idea to have a IDE which you will be using alongside Cursor, because there are some things we'll see in this tutorial that IntelliJ or other Java-based IDE are good at, like debugging, profiling, other thing, and Cursor AI is for using AI-assisted coding like autocomplete or agent, or the viral term vibe coding. Okay, we'll dive into everything step by step. So install Cursor AI, and after installing it, you have to log in or sign up in Cursor AI. And I have already installed it on my system, and I'm on my free trial. So after opening Cursor AI, after installing, I clicked on sign up and it redirected me to browser. I signed up there, and based on one click, everything is synced with my Cursor IDE. Okay, so as you can see, I'm on free trial. So my Cursor AI setup is done, and I also have IntelliJ installed on my system to get the best environment for Java development. So I have IntelliJ IDE free version installed. I have Cursor free trial, and whenever I want to go to pro version, I can just pay and upgrade. Okay, so since our environment setup is done, let's first create a project. So what can we prototype or develop with Cursor AI? Let's develop a document management system which will be having some advanced things like implementing an API which will provide the functionality of uploading files. And since we will be first developing a backend application, a REST application for our targeted document management system, we will have a separate app with React for the frontend, or we can build a monolith with Spring. Okay, so that is the second part of this vibe coding. So first of all, since we are going to implement a document management system, we need to prototype the idea, right? So what will be our functionality? We have to manually analyze and understand what we are going to do. We cannot just go blind and just ask for something, give me that. So let's understand what will be the functionality for this document management system. So for a standard for an MVP of document management, you can upload different kind of document, version them, and see a list of documents which is already uploaded. You can also download the documents. Okay, so let's consider those things along with authorization and authentication. And user can register and sign in and upload some document, see a list of documents they have uploaded, and download a specific document they uploaded. Okay, so for that we can create a new project with IntelliJ, or you can go to Spring Initializer, which is provided by Spring to initialize a Spring Boot project, and this is more intuitive and user friendly. But in order to do those things in Cursor, you have to first add some extension so that you can create a new Spring Boot application, and that is not as user friendly as IntelliJ or Spring Initializer. So for now, let's skip that part in Cursor AI. We'll leverage Cursor AI later, but first let's create a new project from Spring Initializer. Since we have Java 21 on our system, I'm selecting Java, and language is Java. Project build tool is Maven, and the version for Spring will be the latest stable version, which is 3.4.4. Here are some snapshot version or M3 version. Snapshot version is something which is going to be the official version, and M3 is something where the Spring developers are actually working. Okay, so we have selected 3.4.4. Here group ID is chrome.take with m. The artifact ID is document management. Name of the application is document management app. So the package name is com.take with m dot document hyphen management system. That is very long. I can't minimize that to DMS for shortcut. So my group ID, artifact, and package name is configured. Now it's time to add the dependencies. So when it comes to dependency, this is very important part. Like database is crucial for developing this kind of application. So what kind of database you use is very important. And some other dependencies, like for maintaining the SQL, we can use Liquibase. There are lots of things actually. So let's start with Spring Web. So since we will be having authentication and authorization, we'll have Spring Security. Okay, so Spring Security is very powerful tool in Spring Boot, and when this dependency is just added, it does some auto configuration. We'll check out that later. And let's add a tool for JWT, because we'll be having the authentication with the help of JWT. So for that, I'm selecting a lightweight alternative which is simpler. That is okay, I'll add that dependency later. Here I have Spring Web, Spring Security. Let's add, since my database will be Postgres, let's add Postgres here. I've added Postgres as PostgreSQL driver. Let's add a dependency JPA, and JPA will have default ORM as Hibernate. So PostgreSQL driver Spring Data JPA, Spring Security, Spring Web. And if we need any further dependency, we can add that later. No, no problem with that. So here, this is our initial boilerplate application. Clicking on generate and going to my download folder, document management system.zip. It is actually downloaded a zip file. Okay. So here, this is the zip. Let's extract it. I'm clicking on extract all. In this folder, clicking on extract, the folder is extracted. Let's now delete this zip file, and this is containing a separate folder. So inside this folder, we have another folder, and this is containing the boilerplate application. So I'm copying the folder that is containing the project, cutting it, going to my repository folder where I have all the repositories and pasting it here. Now we have the document management system boilerplate application here, and going to IntelliJ, going to documents, and here we have repositories, and I have document management system, and as you can see there is a black icon here. Seems IntelliJ understand what is this folder actually is. Okay, so I'm selecting this folder, or I can select the pom.xml and clicking on OK, and it is asking if I trust this folder, trust this project in this repository, clicking on trust project. So even though we'll be using Cursor AI to boost our productivity, we are working on IntelliJ. That is why I said IntelliJ is a good part of this productivity boost with AI driven development, because for Java, IntelliJ still provides some things that are still the best. Okay, so after opening the project for the first time, it will take some time to resolve the dependencies locally. Since we have used Maven will use Maven Central to download all the dependencies. So let's full screen our project and let IntelliJ give some time to configure things. Here, as you can see, resolving dependencies for document management system. In our pom.xml, I can see the version of Spring, group ID, and the dependencies. We have PostgreSQL, we have Spring Boot test added by default, but the scope is test. That means it is only concerned during the test part of the building cycle. And everything is looking great. Let's see if we can start our project. So since we added PostgreSQL dependency, we have to configure it in our application.properties. This is the properties file for our application. Here it is automatically configured. I can go to edit configuration. Here I can do some additional profiling which is specific to Spring Boot, and if I want to debug, I can do that. So let's pause here for IntelliJ and open the project in Cursor ID and start our vibe coding. Going to repositories, document management system. This is the application, and clicking on select folder. And for the first time, our cursor is opening. So if you want to configure Java specific things in Cursor, you can go here and initialize Java for VS Code or this kind of extension. But since we have IntelliJ IDEA opened alongside and we'll only leverage the agent power of Cursor AI, I'll not configure those things here. Okay, so let's understand the core functionality of Cursor AI here. At the top, we can see that we have primary toggle sidebar, and this one is toggle AI pane. If I click on this, it will disappear, and again it will appear. And here I have two options. One is agent, one is ask. I have actually three options: agent, ask, and manual. Okay, so agent and ask is the primary two things whose focus. Ask is when you want to chat, you want to understand something, you want to analyze something, or you want to prototype something. And agent is the power of Cursor, where you will ask to do something, it will do all the necessary changes and you will just have to accept it. Okay, so for now let's have the agent, and one important thing is the model you want to use. Claude 3.5 Sonnet is by far the best model for Java development as of my experiment up to date. Claude 3.0 Sonnet is good, but it tries to do lots of things at once. So among all of the model for coding like GPT-4, Gemini 2.5 Pro, and Claude 3.5 and 7, this is the model I'd go with Java development. And there are some things like thinking, those things are not very performant. So you can use Claude 3.5 Sonnet, or if you want to do many things at one shot, you can use 3.7, or Gemini 2.5 Pro is a less costly alternative. Okay, so I'm going with Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Okay, and I'm on agent mode, means if I want to do things, I can just ask for it. That is what vibe coding is. You can just instruct something, and without taking any pain, you can just ask again. You can ask blindly to fix some issues. Okay, so vibe coding have some pros and cons. We'll dive into that later. Let's first start database configuration for our application so that we can run our application. So far we cannot run our application, right? So for that I have to uh, connect our application to Postgres. So you can use any database tool like pgadmin or any other database tool you want to use like dbeaver. I personally prefer a tool called Navigate. Okay, so I'm opening Navigate, and one important thing is Postgres database is already installed on my system and up and running. So if you do not have a database like Postgres or MySQL, you have to have that. So you have to have install Postgres and a database tool like Navigate or Dbeaver. So here my Postgres database is connected to Navigate. I can edit the connection, and initial database is discount app, but I do not want to connect to that application since we are creating a new application called document management system. I'll create a new database for this application, and let's create a new database. Here name of the database is, let's just name it DMS. Okay, so clicking on okay. So the thing we need is the host name, port, the username for database, and password. Okay, so those are the thing I initially need to connect our application. So let's ask our agent to connect this application to local PostgreSQL database. The username is PostgreSQL and password is Monir. I have kept it simple for this tutorial, and port is default. Database name is DMS. Okay, so I can manually configure those things in the application properties, but let's do that with help of Claude. Okay, so for that let's see what changes it to. As you can see, it is applying some changes in the application properties. So it did some changes, and also did some suggestion, right? So let's accept all the changes and see what happened. So I've accepted the changes. Once I click on accept, things are once I click on accept, things will be applied to file, means the file will be modified. That is one of the difference between Cursor AI and Windsurf AI. So here the data source URL is this, username is Postgres, password is this, and Spring JPA have a detail auto, means when the model is created with entity annotation, then the appropriate database table will be updated or created. So I do not want to do this. This is good practice for local development, but not for production. We have better alternative these days with Liquibase or similar kind of tool. So I'm setting it to none. So it is asking for some additional suggestion, which will be required later. But here show SQL, format SQL is true, show SQL is true. So when a query is executed, that will be shown in the console. That is a good thing actually. So things are saved here. Let's go to IntelliJ and let's try to run our application and see if things are fixed. The application is started, but there's some error here. Sorry, the username is PostgreSQL. So I have to set. Sorry, the username is Postgres, as I can see here, but I have configured that as PostgreSQL. That is why there were some issues. So let's run again and see what happens. Yeah, our server is running, but since we are using Spring Security, it is enabled by default and a password is configured for login. So a login system is enabled by default. We have to work around that. But our application is up and running. It is showing something which is good idea to configure, like how many Hickory pool connection should be always established in our application, right? How many database connection. Hickory pool is a connection pool which keeps already established connection for database operation in our application. So here database driver is showing undefined, but let's not bother with that because this is an info error and there's some warn, but those things are for Spring Security. So our application is up and running. Now we have to dive into feature implementation. So we did something with Cursor AI. What do we want to do now? Our application is up and running. So first of all, we have to design our database for our document management system. So like all the applications, we have to configure authorization and authentication for this. And the thing is done with Spring Security, which is a very powerful tool for providing authentication, authorization, and lots of other required security related thing actually. So now we have to carefully instruct our Cursor AI to do the thing which we want, which is preparing necessary database schema to work with Spring Security and implement the basic security. Okay. Here let's type I need to design the database for this application. First, I want to implement authentication and authorization with Spring Security and JWT. We'll use Auth0 JWT library for this purpose. So let's create the entities required for authentication using Spring Security like users, roles, etc. We'll design the database for rest of the application later after implementing the auth APIs. Implement the entities and services following Spring's security rules. Okay, so here I have written a detailed instruction for Cursor AI. I need to design the database for this application. First, I want to implement the authentication and authorization with Spring Security and JWT. I'll use Auth0's JWT library for this purpose. This is actually a lightweight alternative for official JWT library, which is a little bit complex and too much for this application. And then I have typed, so let's create the entities required for authentication using Spring Security and like users, roles, etc. We'll design the database for rest of the application later, like document management, like document table and other related core functionality for this application. And then I typed, after implementing the auth APIs, we'll design the database for rest of the application later after implementing the auth APIs. Implement the entities and services following Spring security rules, and also give me the detail for the tables to run on PostgreSQL server. Okay, so let's click on send and see what happens. I'm in agent mode and using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. It is working. It is saying that I'll help you create a necessary entities and services for authentication using Spring Security with JWT. First of all, it is doing some changes in pom.xml. The library I have asked for is Java JWT, and it have added it successfully. It also added the Lombok dependency. I'm clicking on accept, and it is creating the necessary entities and services. So one important thing is organizing the project effectively, right? So let's see how it organizes things by default. I didn't ask about any project structure I want, right? So that is one important thing. So it have created an entity called user, and then created a role entity called role name, then a role name is an enum. I'm clicking on accept all, and it is still working. So in our Java, it created a new package here, as you can see, entity, then repository, and it is creating the repositories. Clicking on accept all once again. This is what vibe coding is. Feels good actually. Now it is creating the security configurations. It have created a new package called config and created a security configuration. We'll check out everything in IntelliJ because we did not fully configure our cursor ID for Java development. We are using IntelliJ for that. It is using the JWT filter service. Let's click on accept all. Let's stop the server here. It have created an authentication filter. And one important thing is you have to whitelist the APIs, whitelist the core authentication APIs like generating token for the first time. Otherwise, Spring Security will block them. Okay, it is also creating a SQL script in the resource folder called DB migration, which is good actually. We could configure liquidbs for this purpose. We could, but let's continue. So it did lots of coding. I'm clicking on accept all because of the vibe. And once things are done, it is actually giving a summary. It is added some dependency, created some entity, created the repositories for the entities, set up some configuration, security config, JWT service, JWT authentication filter, and all of that, and asking me to look at the SQL. Okay, so I've accepted all, and we cannot understand things in cursor, but here if there's some syntax error or compilation error, we'll check that out here. I'm running the project on IntelliJ. Okay, Lombok is required. Enable annotation processing. Clicking on enable annotation processing. The project is failing. user detail service bean is not found here. So this is the second parameter. Let's go to this service. This is Spring security thing. We have to implement it, but I don't see the implementation of this. So this is one of the thing when Cursor AI fails, I mean Cloud API fails. So I have to ask for this issue. I can type that. So I'm going to Cursor here once again and saying that used in JWT authentication filter is not implemented, and that pin is not being found when I have written that user detail service used in JWT authentication filter is not implemented, and that pin is not being found when JWT authentication filter pin is being initialized by Spring. Need your help to fix and correctly implement that. Let's see how it correct that issue, or if it fails. I think it have understood the issue. It have created a custom user detail service. So even though you want to vibe code with Java Spring, you have to have some knowledge of the platform actually. It is not like implementing a thing with JavaScript or Python. Java requires some knowledge and the ecosystem. It did several changes, and let's see if the issue is actually fixed or not. I can manually fix those things, but since we are vibe coding here, I am also trying to learn how far this LLM can go. Okay, so I'm accepting all the changes it did and going to IntelliJ once again, and let's try to run the project once again. This time it seems to work and Tomcat server is started. So far we have successfully configured the security, and it have given me the SQL to create. So I'm copying all the SQL and going to my localhost and trying to run the things. So I have successfully executed all the SQL it provided, and there were no issue. It also inserted the enum in the roles table. Okay, so things seems to be working good. Now let's start implementing our first API. So I've typed now, help me write the auth APIs. Don't forget to whitelist the APIs from Spring Security appropriately. Once again, vibe coding. So far the project structure looks good to me, but when I have some big thing in my mind, I would organize the project accordingly from the very first step. So I'm clicking on enter and let's see what it does. I've asked for the APIs. So that is a lot of work actually. So in order to do that, you have to have some request entity, response entity, a controller package, and some controller under the controller package. Now it is writing the DTO first, sign up request, sign in request, and auth response. By the way, you have to have Postman to send a REST request to our application. It is writing the auth service IMPL. It is creating the controllers. Oh, one thing is adding the validation dependency, Spring Boot starter validation. This is very intelligent actually, because when it is using a different thing, it is checking if the dependency is added in the application. If not, it is adding the dependency in the pom.xml. It is also giving me a sample endpoint. Okay, so I didn't ask about a code password encryption like bcrypt, but it already did that. Transaction management, error handling, everything. It's asking me if I want to do any adjustment into the implementation. So let's accept this first and go to IntelliJ and see what it did. It did some authentication. One is sign up. Camel case is not practiced here, but it is okay. Let's start the application. So all the auth API is already whitelisted here. Let's start our application. Application started. I have to send a request with Postman. What I can do is I can ask to give me a curl. Give me a curl for the sign up request to import on Postman with sample data. So it is giving me a curl to import on Postman. I'm copying this, going to Postman, clicking on import and pasting it here, import into collection. And I can see that it is imported with some sample data which cursor have given. And the port is localhost 8080 auth API. Since the server is running, let's clear it up and send a request for the first time. Awesome. It successfully created the user and returned a JWT token. Let's go to cursor here and ask it to sign up URL for that. So upon registration, a JWT token is returned. So this is kind of a decision design thing if you want the user to keep logged in. But I think Cursor Cloud AI just followed an opinioned approach, which is fine for this kind of application. So once again, I'm going to Cursor AI and asking for give me the curl for sign in API 2. Copying the sign in command and let's go to Postman once again and click on import and paste the curl and click on import into collection. The signing API is already imported and is containing the request body username and password. Let's send it. Here the sign-in API is returning 403, that means forbidden, and in the console, as you can see, the SQL query is executed, so there is no issue with the authentication implementation. So since we can debug in IntelliJ, let's put a debug here in this method, in this authentication method, and see what is going on. If there is an exception, we can't read the exception and understand what is going on. So debugging is started and debug point is here. And if I go to Postman again and send the request, IntelliJ is catching it. And let's step over, and once again stepping over, and an exception has occurred. This is a global exception, and in the exception, if I extend it, what the user account is locked. So there are few fixed field in Spring Security for principal users, which is used by default. So if we go to the security config, we can see that we're using our custom user details service. If I go to that, I can see that it is fetching the user details by username. So if I go to users, I can see that there are some additional field, and this user details is part of Spring Security core. So here we have get user name, get password, is account not expired, is account not logged, is credentialed not expired, is enabled, blah blah blah. Those are the field that is used for the user. And in our database, if I go to the users table, I can see that we have created those fields like enabled, account not expired. All of those fields value is set to false. So that is why when Spring Spring Security is authenticating the user, it is actually fetching the user and reading that the user is not enabled. Okay. This is useful when we are developing a system where the user is validated with email or SMS OTP or a admin user who is manually approving the users, right? But here in our all service IMPL, in our sign up, we are creating the new user and we are setting the role by default, and upon successful registration we are returning the JWT token. So this is a self register and login mechanism. So for that we cannot make the default value for this enabled account not expired account non-logged to false. We have to make them true. So how we can have that, we can put those field in this builder, like account not expired to true, and then account not logged to true, and then enabled to true. Okay. So if I do all those things, let's go to database once again. Enabled, account not expired, account not logged, credential not expired. This is another field. Okay. So dot credential not expired to true. So this is where you need a native Java IDE, because sometimes you will stuck into this kind of scenario and LLM will just stuck. LLM will not proceed. So you have to understand what is going on. You have to have the knowledge, and only then you can speed up your development process. Okay. So it is always very important to understand what code is being generated. So I have made everything true in the user creation process so that in the database those fields are not false. But what about the existing user that is already created? Okay. Let's make it, I can manually type T here and make them true. T. Okay. So everything is made to true here. And if I refresh, I can see that things are made true for this existing John Doe. Now if I restart the server once again, stopping the debugging, and request once again from Postman, boom, I can say that token is returned, which will be used on the following request for document uploading, getting the document, etc. Okay. So this token will be the token for authentication for this user. So we have successfully implemented the authentication for document management system. Let's dive into the database and see what are the structures. What is the structure of this users table? Okay. So here, as you can see, users table have those columns, and use roles is a static table with fixed values: role user, role admin, and role moderator. Those are opinioned and created by cursor. And here role underscore user, it is very important because this is a convenient followed by Spring Security. So whenever you want to restrict a API to a specific user group, you can use pre-authorized or secured annotation with those. And here the role of the user John Doe, which I have created with sign up, is mapped with these user rules. So your user ID is 1 and role ID is 1. User ID is 1 for user ID 1 is for John Doe and role ID 1 is user. So our authentication system is implemented correctly with the help of Cursor AI and Cursor AI's agent. Okay, so in the following tutorial, I'll show you how to add additional features. I already believe you have got the idea how we can vibe code along with this, how we can continue vibe coding with this application, right? Sometimes if you are stuck into something like this, you can change the model, or you can try to understand what is going on. That's why I always recommend using a native IDE like IntelliJ. So now let's explore what are the things that IntelliJ can provide. In here, I can put a active profile for my environment variable for my application properties. Let's say you want to have separate application properties for separate environment. One is for local development, one is for dev server, one is for staging server, one is for QA server, and one is for UAT or integration test server, right? So all those things can be passed when the application is starting, and you can manually configure that in the active profile. Okay, so this is one example. There are lots of other things that you can modify here. As you can see, it is a long list. You can pass environment variables, you can add VM option, you can shorten the command line, and many more. Those are the thing comes with a native Java IDE. So when you are vibe coding or leveraging the AI coding power, it is good idea to use IntelliJ or a similar IDE. So that's it for this tutorial. It is already a very long tutorial. If you have enjoyed watching this video and learned something, I would highly recommend you to hit a like button for the YouTube algorithm, because most of my viewers on my channel is not subscribed, and even though they are helped, they are not hitting the like button. And just hitting on the like button means a lot for me. Let the YouTube algorithm know that this is a good content. Okay, so please do that for me. And if you are actually enjoying my content, consider subscribing to my channel. And that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you in a more exciting tutorial later. Until that time, happy vibe coding.